Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P.
And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Qtr Time podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of the Mavericks mini-series that we're producing for 2024, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Saracens Mavericks head coach Camilla Buchanan. How are you doing, Cam?
Hey Lucy, good to see you. How's things?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Excited to have you on. You've been a long time supporter of the pod and really encouraging to us, so it really is a joy for me to finally have you on the pod and talk about you and your netball journey. So thank you very much for coming on.
Welcome.
We're going to do a little bit of a coaching profile on you today, taking a look at some of your earliest memories of the sport through to your days playing for Saracens Mavericks, and now, of course, as head coach of the side that you won a championship with in 2011, I think it was. So to start us off then, what's your netball origin story? How did you first get into the sport?
Oh, God. I mean, probably the same as everybody else, school, going through all the pathway channels of county and getting into the England setup at 15 or so, played, England age group stuff, which is where I got scouted, I guess, by Lynn Gunson to go to Bath. So at 16, I got a scholarship to move to Bath. And was there for 3 years. And yeah, I guess that kind of started the elite journey. I remember I was still in high school at the time, and I'd met Lynn. She'd come into a training camp, an England training camp, and she got me doing all this weird stuff that I'd never done before, like turning on the ball in all this way. Anyway, I remember having a meeting with her and my mum, and she said, we're starting this new high performance program at Bath. You're going to be training every day and blah, blah, blah. And at the time there was this, sorry, I'm totally going off point right now.
No,
but at the time there was, I can't remember the name of it. There was an Australian program. It was like a teen bopper kind of thing. And it was based around basically high performance sports. So like kids that were, it might have been like mimicking the Australian Institute of Sport, but basically these, kids that were at the high level, and they were training every day. And it was just like this dream come true to be able to train in a sport that you love every single day. And like at school age, I was like, right, I'm going to do it. So whilst all my friends were going to be going off to sixth form or college, I was going to be moving across the country to Bath. And so that was kind of the early stages, I guess, and that started the high performance journey. And went through the England age groups, toured a couple of times to Australia, which was brilliant. And then obviously Team Bath was born, and that was where the Super League career started. So yeah, I mean the really early days were the same as everybody else. School had had a music teacher that taught netball, and she was really enthusiastic and just totally loved everything about the sport, and got me really passionate about it. So yeah, that's kind of the early stages.
A music teacher who teaches netball, that's amazing. It's incredible though, because it's always those teachers. I don't think teachers get enough like praise or acknowledgement for actually the lifelong impacts that they have. It's really incredible. And tell me a little bit about your family. Did you come from a particularly sporting family at all?
Yeah, so both my brothers, my younger brother still does play semi-professional football, but my older brother played semi-pro as well. Both my mum will still claim that the sporty gene comes from her. She played netball in school, and my dad was really sporty as well. He played football and badminton in his later years, but yeah, all very active always. And it was always, weekends were always full of gymnastics and, following my brothers around the world, not around the world, that's an absolute lie. It felt like around the world playing football. So yeah, it was just always sport for sure.
A competitive household, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually remember being my brother's like 6 years younger than me, and we used to be in my dad's garden. And at the time, he was really young, and we held no punches. We were playing football with each other, and he would always be crying and throwing tantrums because we would not go easy on him. And he is by far turned out like the best athlete. So yeah, it pays.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And you obviously had a really great playing career with Mavericks. In particular, you did 8 seasons there. 2 grand finals, 1 championship. Who were some of your, I suppose, your biggest influences or inspirations as a player?
I guess at the time, like back then, across the pond, we didn't have the access to watch as much stuff, right, as we do now. But a player that I do remember was Sherelle McMahon, the Australian goal attack. She was a real force, and I remember I didn't get to see her many times, but she was always someone that sparked massive inspiration. But I guess this side of the pond, I can remember Sonia McCloma, who's a good friend now, obviously Rose's assistant coach, and now the lead for the Rose's Pathway. We played for the same county, and she was, a little bit older than me, and she used to, the seniors would play first and everyone would go and watch them, and then we'd all play on the outdoor courts afterwards, and the seniors would come out and they'd be walking around and watch. And I remember Sonia McCloma walking through, and she had on this like big black puffer jacket, like hood up, and it was just majestic watching her. it was incredible. But she was absolutely incredible. Amanda Newton and Karen Atkinson, who was my captain at the time when I first went to Mavericks, like they were just a different breed of player back then. There was this grit about them. There was this no nonsense about them. You couldn't get away with anything. Everything was about the, club first, and the work ethic was unreal. Like you could not come into a team like that and coast. There's just no way. So yeah, those players were really influential in my career, and even to this day, the stuff that they're doing, away from the court is really impressive.
Yeah, Sonia is actually one of my all-time favourite ever players. She's probably one of my earliest memories of watching netball as opposed to like playing or coaching or whatever. I absolutely love her. But that was like a who's who of, that was like a netball roll call. All the big names. That's absolutely incredible. And I can absolutely see why they were such a big influence to you. And obviously after playing, you then went into coaching. You took up an assistant coach role at Mavericks after you retired. Talk to me about that transition from going from playing where you're on court and you're kind of in control of everything to then going to coaching where you have to relinquish that control and it's kind of up to your players. Talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, it was a one that I don't think I'd anticipated as much, especially being on the same side as players that I'd played with these guys. These were friends, they were, teammates, and now I'm having to, coach them. So that was definitely an interesting transition, some with its ups, some with its downs. But one thing that I quickly learned in this game is that it can be quite it's an interesting space. It can be quite a lonely space. Assistant coach role was different. Again, one that even now I'm learning that there was so many holes in that part that I had to play as assistant coach. There's no manual. Like I didn't find there was a manual to kind of let right, this is your role as assistant coach and how you need to support your head coach. I was very much about the game and coached in a way that I had played, I guess. But it was some of it went really smooth, some not so smooth. But that's the journey of life, let alone coaching. But one that was for the most part in that assistant coach role was good, and then the transition to head coach has been a whole new ball game.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a second. As coaching, was it always like a natural progression for you? Have you always been interested in coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually talking to my son about this the other day. I had an English teacher in secondary school who tutored me for a while, and she said, I think I play in a little team in Bushy. We'd love you to come and do some coaching for us. Like I must have been about 14 or 15. And I just didn't even think about it. I was like, yeah, cool, I'll come down, earn a couple of quid. And it just came really natural. Like even at that point, I was coaching like the year 8 team or helping coach the year 8 team. So it's something that's always come very natural to me. And I coached at Brunel University for years and had done lots of, coaching gigs along the way. So it wasn't something that it was a huge transition, but to the elite environment it was. And when we get onto the head coaching stuff, it's, as I said, it's a whole new world.
Well, that's a great little transition. So we'll come on to the head coach stuff. So after the 2022 season, you were obviously appointed head coach of Mavericks following the departure of Kat Rapnapala. And, it's important to note that you are the first Black woman to lead a Netball Super League side as head coach. I think that's really significant. And I recently spoke to, you probably know her, Sharon Lewis-Burke, the head coach of the England men's, the Thorns. I spoke to her for another project that I'm doing. And she shared that often when she goes to like national championships or national performance programs, she's usually the only Black female coach there. And so she talked to me a little bit about this, almost a sense of duty to kind of continue what she's doing in order to be that representation and to be that, the epitome of you can't be what you can't see. Like she's partly doing it to show young Black girls that you can reach that dream because I've done it, which is amazing. So how significant is it to you to be the first Black Netball Super League head coach?
One thing I'm just going to put a little note in, because I think it's important when we talk about colour, to whilst I'd like to say women of colour or of Black heritage, because I'm not fully Black, and I think it's something that some people think is important, some people don't think it's important, but I've talked about this before with a series I'd done before, and when Barack Obama came into presidency of the United States and was like the first Black president, everyone was like, oh, he's only half, it's this, it's that. So I just want to acknowledge that I am the first person of Black heritage, of mixed heritage, to come into this role. However, that said, I'm still half Black, and I 100% take that on my shoulders, and it's one that I carry with tremendous pride. I remember receiving some messages from a couple of players, not from my team, Black players, and they're quite young, coming through the system, and they said, it was a congratulations messages saying, this is so amazing to see, the first Black head coach. Like, it's such an inspiration, and receiving messages like that was like, wow, like, it's seen, and it means a lot to a lot of people. Some people won't care, but a lot of people will. And for me, it's then what you do with that position. I've managed to get into some rooms, get on the table to have conversations with some people that I wouldn't have done before, and to hopefully make some changes in areas that typically you weren't able to reach. I love the fact that, Sonia McCloma, as Rose's assistant coach, is now, one of the first Black head leads in that England program. So I want to say a massive big up to her as well. I think it's massively important because there's an area of perspective that comes with it. So how things are structured and what a player's experience will be, what coaches' experiences will be, and it just gives you the opportunity to give provision for everyone to feel like they've got a place. And it's really interesting, actually, because for Black History Month, we did a celebration. We had West Indian food on. We had like a bit of a quiz day, but it was all done with diversity in mind. So we talked about stereotypes, and we kind of had a this or that, and it was kind of around different stereotypes, and it was just a really it was a lighthearted way to open conversations that some people will 100% be clued up on. Some people had no idea and had never even thought of some of the issues. So it was a really cool way to kind of bring in that L&D kind of diversity stuff for all players. But it gave also some players a space that they'd never had before, and for them to really feel like a space was given to them for just them. And there are lots of areas of diversity that you can tap into for that, and this is just one that we've hooked into for now. So yeah, I carry it with pride, but with massive responsibility as well.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that, and for also sharing with me around my terminology and stuff. Like, I really appreciate that. And I think having such an open space where you can talk with such freedom, like being able to have this safe space with you, is really meaningful to me. So thank you very much for sharing that.
And also, you didn't say anything wrong, by the way. I'm just you didn't say anything wrong. I was just clarifying because I know that colorism is a thing, and it's important to to highlight that whilst I absolutely take that title, there's also, you know, a little side note that that I also appreciate that some people will accept that, you know, I'm only halfway there. But, you know, nonetheless, you said nothing wrong. It's great to have the conversation.
It really is so valuable. So I really appreciate it. And you mentioned a little bit earlier around you said something about the transition from assistant coach to head coach. We're going to tap into that a little bit now. Obviously, you had a number of years as assistant coach under Katnat Rapala and other coaches, and then taking on that title yourself. What was that leap like? And digging a little bit more to what you said around coaching being quite a lonely experience, because you're not the first coach that I've heard say that. We've had a number of coaches on the pod say that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first year, you know, there was a huge kind of shift towards the culture being right. So that was a massive target of mine to get Mavs to a place where, you know, the culture was good. People wanted to come into work every day and you know, it was a place where people could thrive. So that was a huge, you know, a huge goal for me. In terms of the coaching side of things, I'm lucky to have some really great people around me, but it can be a lonely place because, and I say that because ultimately, you know, it sits on your shoulders. And when you walk out of the sports hall and get home at 11 o'clock at night, like, it doesn't stop there. Like, the cogs are always turning. There's, you know, video to watch and there's problems to solve. I mean, look, everyone's got a tough job in what they do. It can just be, it's a tricky place, but very rewarding. You know, year 1 to year 2 has presented unbelievable different challenges, but ones that I welcome. And I think with what I was saying about, you know, the head coach from assistant coaches, you just look at things in a total different way, and your role is completely different to that of an assistant coach. You know, I'm really lucky in the sense that I've got, you know, Becky Trippick, who's an amazing assistant coach and has actually really taught me what my downfalls were as an assistant coach. She's incredible from a player perspective, and the care and attention that she gives to individuals on that front is outstanding, which allows me to crack on with the strategic planning, and, you know, that I heavily work with Tamsin, who's also been outstanding in the support she's given me. So yeah, I've got amazing people around me and I use them a lot.
I think that's great though, because that's what you need. And every coach that we have spoken to on the podcast has said something of kind of similar vein, is that it's that network and that support bubble, being really quite selective with who actually makes it into that support bubble, is something Tracy Neville talked about a lot. And having those that you can really trust and lean on to be in that. And then anyone else can kind of sit outside of that on the fringes, but having that network is absolutely crucial. And we know that Mavs historically have kind of struggled. I think it's the last 8 years that they've struggled to break into that top 4 position. Yeah. And, you know, elite sport is brutal at the end of the day. Not everyone is going to make it. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And in 2024, we're currently sitting in 7th. We've got a really crucial game against Stars coming out this weekend, which I am buzzing for. And recently, I've started watching Ted Lasso, which I am obsessed with. It's incredible. But there's a beautiful line in there where he said something about success being more than just the wins that you get on the pitch or on the court or whatever. So how do you personally, with your coaching hat on, define success and failure over and above the result of a game?
I think it's important to say that winning is important to me. Like, I'm a competitive person. And if anyone in elite sport says that they step into their ground with any other expectation than to win, then I'd tell you they're lying. But as you said, aside from that part, success for me is, and this kind of ties into, I guess, my values as a coach is, you know, I want an environment that people want to come into, like they want to come into work every day. They feel energized, motivated. They feel as though every single time they step into the room, they have improved and that they've gained some knowledge. Like, that's hugely important to me. I also feel like if players are stepping away better than when they came in, is huge for me, because, if you're improving people, if you're improving the person, then you're going to get a better athlete out of them. But in terms of like that success piece, I mean, I'm in year 2 of being a head coach, and I'm very aware that Mavs, if you look at the results, we've been sitting average for a good few years. Now, I know that if I look after the important parts, if I look after the people, if I get that part right, if I get the environment right, but then there's a massive shift in terms of the strategic side of the game, which has been a huge learning for me this year, that I will get to that point where we will break out of this mid zone. But it takes time. It does take time. I think Stars have done an incredible job of catapulting, and I think that's really rare for sports teams to be able to do that. But there is a longer, a bigger picture in terms of how you build to that and what it takes to get there. So, getting the environment right, getting the right strategic help, and, tactical awareness, getting the right technical support in place, and then creating an environment, a setup where players come in and they're able to slot right into the Mavericks way. That's what success is going to look like. And we're on the path to that, but it does take some time. And that's probably one of the hardest parts of this job. I remember it as a player. I remember sitting in Lynn Gunson's office as a 17-year-old crying because I was like, I just want to play for England. I just want to play for England. And she was like, these things take time. You can't, for some players, it happens really quickly. And, there's very few of those. But for some, everyone sits on a bench behind someone for some time. And then when you break into that unit, it takes time to win medals, especially if you're not, Australia. So as a coach, it's the same approach. And these things do take time. You've got to get the foundation parts right. For me, again, there was no manual with this. My assistant coach role was completely different to coming into this head coach role and what I've learned. So you're kind of having to learn on the job. And I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And I've got people behind me that believe in that and believe in me. But, we're lucky that we're not in a sport like football that chops your head after 7 losses. They believe in the bigger picture and investing in the right people. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I find it really interesting because we talk so much in netball, particularly maybe other sports as well, but we talk so much around like learnings and trusting the process. And you really do have to actually do that. But where does that kind of that steadfastness or that confidence or the resilience to trust in the process when perhaps it isn't going your way every single week, where does that steadfastness for you personally come from?
Well, I think firstly, there's a lot that I've taken as a player. I was pretty hardcore and was able to just, crack on, like, the ups, the downs, you just get the job done. Now, I think it's really important to say that none of this journey is linear. Like there are ups, there are downs. You absolutely doubt yourself, a lot of the time. But I think, one of the things I talk about my players about is how we respond to stuff. And I think that for me is key in how you propel yourself forwards. And there are times where, you have to work really hard to pull yourself out of a place that's not conducive with moving forwards. So for me, I've got some great people around me. I also do a lot of work on myself in terms of listening to certain podcasts, listening to some incredible people, that kind of self-growth stuff. I'm spiritual, so I listen to the word of God, and there's a lot of messages there that really do help drive, because you can't, confidence just doesn't come like that. But it's how you respond to stuff, how you can change and be in control of your outlook on things. And look, the rest will be right. If you're going to be in this role, you're going to be in this role, and knowing though that nothing lasts forever, and you give it your best shot when you're in there. When the chips are down and toughest and times are hard, you dig deeper, and you constantly ask yourself, what's my contribution to this? What can I do to help fix this? Never looking outwards and pointing the finger. That's really key for me, and something that I also say to my players. And then the rest the rest is up to the universe. If things will be, if you're doing the hard work, if you are recruiting the right kind of tools, getting the right kind of knowledge behind you, the right kind of resources, then, for me, the sky's the limit.
I absolutely love that. I think sport is probably the ultimate lesson in mental toughness, I think is probably the best way to put it. And I think that's, it's great to hear about such a proactive approach to self-care and self-development. It's a great little note for everyone listening. And I think one of the things that I love about you particularly, and it just sort of emanates off of you as you're talking, is your passion for the game. You clearly live and breathe the sport. It's probably woven into the fabric of your being. You've dedicated so much to your life of it in various forms: player, coach, pundit, a documentary presenter, which we haven't even come on to yet, which we'll touch on in a bit. You do so much in the sport. Maybe you'll be an umpire one day, who knows? But
I think we can safely say no.
Gary Burgess, she's coming for your job. I'm joking. But what is it about netball specifically that really speaks to your soul without sounding all cheesy?
I mean, it's super cheesy, but that's right up my street. Do you know what? Somebody asked me this the other day, and I mean, there's no getting away from the cheese in this answer, but a good few years ago, it was around the 2012 Olympics, so it was just a bit before then, there was this massive drive with Great Britain handball to try and select a whole new load of athletes, and it was this athlete recruitment thing. And Tamsin Greenway, actually, she let me know about it. We both went to these trials in the Midlands, and we got selected. We travelled to Germany with Great Britain handball and trained with one of the best coaches around in handball for this camp. And we were kind of offered, to move forward to the next steps and take residence somewhere in Europe. I can't even remember where it was. And basically, to work towards the 2012 Olympics. And whilst it was an incredible experience, there was something about that sport I just couldn't get with. And it wasn't that sport in particular, but there is something about netball. I don't know what it is. There's something about, even now in training, sometimes if our daytime sessions, sometimes the numbers are smaller, so I might need to get a ball in hand and do a bit of feeding or whatever. But there's something about that ball being in your hand that I can't even explain it, Lucy. I don't know what it is. I think, some things you're just born for, and this sport, it's ridiculous because it's a little round ball and you're on a rectangle with a couple of lines, and you make your whole life and career about it. But I don't know, it's special. It brings out something that nothing else can. I can't imagine being without it. That sounds so cheesy.
No, mate, I am with you though, because I'm sort of similar. It was the 2018 Commonwealth Games that kind of got me back into it. And I say this to every single person I talk to about it. When Helen Housby scored that last second goal, the only way I can describe it is like a bolt of electricity through my body. And it was just from that moment, that was it. And I worked in theatre at the time. It was like an admin type role. And when I got a job in netball, I said to my boss in the theatre company, I was like, I'm going to work in netball. I was playing netball. I was starting to coach netball. I was doing this and the other. She was like, you are going to get so bored doing netball as your hobby and netball as your job. It's going to be too much. You're going to get really overwhelmed. And I was like, nope.
No, love. No.
and I haven't. Yeah. And yes, there are times where, sometimes I need a little bit of a netball detox because it is literally my life. But there is just something about it. And I don't know, it's that really ethereal, magical quality that neither of us can really put words to. So,
yeah.
You're in good company here. But one of the things I just want to touch on, I'm a little conscious of time. So I'll probably do this and then wrap up because I know you're a very busy lady. But as well as coach, player, pundit, you also presented the Black Roses documentary, which was incredible, exploring the history of the Black Roses, how the Windrush generation produced the first Black athletes to represent England in the red dress. Your granddad was actually part of the Windrush generation. So tell me a little bit about the experience of presenting that documentary. How profound or important was it for you to be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, it seems quite such a long time ago now, but still such a a moment. So Leanne, the Sky producer, came to me. We've obviously worked together for years, and said, we're looking to do something for Black History Month. Just wanted to, brainstorm with you. So I kind of went away and did a bit of a brainstorm, and then just put together like a storyboard of, right, how cool would it be to kind of figure out who the first Black, player was to put on an England dress. And I'd never, I didn't know who it was at the time. I had to do some digging. A friend of mine who now lives in the States, she'd actually played in, I'd found out a few names, and found out Jean Hornsby was her name, and found out she was from the Midlands, and my friend was from the Midlands. So I contacted her and said, look, don't suppose you've got any links to find it. Anyway, somehow she got this lady's number. I managed to, get a message to her, and it kind of started from there. And I presented, my idea to Leanne and Sky, and they were really supportive from the word go. And it was just a beautiful piece to make. It was so nostalgic for so many people, people of the older generation. The amount of messages I got, I remember watching her, or I used to play with that person, and it evoked this nostalgia in some people. For others, it was a massive representation of something that had never been talked about before. And to be one of the first netball documentaries was brilliant. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was about what it was going to spark and what change it could spark. Again, doors it could open. For me, it's always about where it's then going to go next. Was it the quad series, or no, it wasn't. It was a test series. Yeah, it was the England Jamaica, and they called it the Jean Hornsby Cup just for that year. But that was incredible for her to get that recognition as well. And then just conversations off the back of it, and it was a huge moment in time when it happened. So yeah, I think it's been part of creating some change and opening up some education. I got messages from schools saying I'm showing this in schools. So yeah, it was incredible, and I hope it's not like the last thing that we see of that kind of work. So incredibly important.
I absolutely loved it. I watched it again this morning in preparation for this interview. I thought it's absolutely incredible to not just to look at the past, but to also celebrate like the athletes that we've had, the athletes that are coming through. I thought it was absolutely wicked. And final question for you, Camilla. Your journey has been amazing. I've really enjoyed talking to you about it, from playing to coaching to presenting, punditry, all of that. What's next for Camilla? What's kind of your future aspirations?
I would love to build a side that has all of those elements that I talked about, to create a team that has a real legacy, to have a team that is a championship side. I would love to win the Super League as head coach, but not only that, take the sport to a new level in terms of competing with overseas. I think that, one day I'd love to see, an SSN, ANZ, NSL combination, and creating a team that could compete in that. That's where I'd love to go. It's not, there's not loads and loads of goals, but that's one vision that I do have, and yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I love that. If there's one thing I'm sure about you, is that you'll leave the sport in a better place than when you found it. So amazing to chat to you, Camilla. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the game on Friday.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Lucy.